Good morning. It's Sunday, March 8th, and this is the Georgia Gang. I'm Russ Spencer, sitting in for Lori Geary. On the program this morning, Joe Biden's stunning southern sweep on Super Tuesday and what it means for Georgia's primary and the race for president. Georgia confronts its first cases of coronavirus, and the State House Committee votes in favor of allowing home delivery of beer and wine. Theron, Phil, Janelle, and Kathy are all here today. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And then there were two. Joe Biden shocked the world and himself, it seems, by rising from the political canvas in South Carolina to reclaim his front-runner status on Super Tuesday. And Mike Bloomberg, who spent $1 billion and has more than $50 billion left, has promised to help him finish the fight against Bernie Sanders and then President Trump.
People are talking about a revolution. We started a movement. We've increased turnout. And the turnout's turned out for us.
It was Bernie Sanders who promised to bring out new voters in droves, but African Americans gave Joe Biden a 28-point victory in South Carolina and helped him win 10 of the 14 states on Super Tuesday, including Elizabeth Warren's home state of Massachusetts, where Biden spent a paltry $11,000. Sanders claimed California the biggest prize.
You cannot beat Trump with the same old kind of politics.
Money did not carry the day for former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, but he seems eager to find out whether more of it might help Biden beat President Trump.
I will not be our party's nominee, but I will not walk away from the most important political fight of my life, and I hope you won't walk away either.
Sometimes you just don't have what it takes. He made a fool out of himself, to be honest with you.
Now, the Democrats are the big story this week, but for some context, a new poll from the University of Georgia this week finds President Trump leading in a matchup with Joe Biden here in Georgia, 51 to 43%, with an approval rating of 54%. So let's talk about it. What do you think, Phil? You would think, looking at that, the president would feel pretty good about things.
Well, I did see the University of Georgia poll. I've been critical of that polling. I'm glad that it did show Trump ahead. I've always thought that he was ahead in this state. I won't get into the weeds there, but I don't like the way they weight it and things like that. And we can talk about that as the election season goes. But going back to Georgia and Joe Biden and what happened, I think it was a repudiation of the fact that a socialist is going to really hurt down ballot races, especially in the South. And a lot of the Democrats that think this thing through realize that if we're going to push socialism, it's got to be stealth. It can't be open like Bernie Sanders with all these radical ideas that cost trillions of dollars. So I think that Bernie was fading. Joe Biden, of course, represents the establishment of the Democratic Party, the Obama wing, the Hillary wing, and they're going to screw over Bernie again. He's not going to get the nomination.
Well, a few African Americans across the South had something to say about it, too. Theron, I know you saw this coming when no one else did. What do you think happened in South Carolina?
I got to be honest, Russ. I saw it coming, but I didn't think it was going to be this big. I mean, if you had told me 2 weeks ago that former Vice President Joe Biden will do this, the unknown, which is to just dominate Super Tuesday at a time where a lot of people thought that the spending of Mike Bloomberg, him sort of foregoing the early 4 states and really focusing on Super Tuesday. But the thing that was really glaring to me is 2 things. One, Joe Biden is someone who we all know and we trust, and I think African Americans in South Carolina sent a strong message to other African Americans and white Democratic voters, white Hispanic voters, Democratic voters, and Asian Democratic voters. And that is that we know that the African American vote is essential to winning the presidency. And so, more importantly, you got to thank Mike Bloomberg for not only running, but for committing $1 billion to not only help the next Democratic nominee, who we all think probably is going to be Joe Biden, but it's going to help these Senate races, these congressional races, these state House and state Senate races, and key battleground states. And so if you look at where Vice President Biden did well in states like Virginia, where you saw a sort of a triple point increase in voter turnout, if you look at places like North Carolina and other states, I definitely think that he is the prime candidate to go and face Donald Trump in 2020 in November.
All right, Kathy, you're a veteran of campaigns. How much do you think Michael Bloomberg's money is going to make a difference to Biden's campaign if he's the nominee, to whoever ends up being the Democratic nominee?
I think it's going to help a lot. I think that, having the extra money there his ads were incredibly effective. It didn't get him over the finish line, but they were very interesting if you were watching them, and you could hardly miss them. And I think having him talk about issues in whatever way they see fit, I think will be good. I think it'll give us some extra organizing power. But even without that, what we're seeing right now in early voting is that Democrats across the board, across races, across parts of the state, are voting at higher levels than they were at this time in the last presidential election. So there is a lot of attention being paid. People are excited. And I think they're consolidating around Biden, and people have kind of made up their mind and are getting out there. But that's an important thing to watch as we go through early voting and then on Election Day.
And they're telling pollsters, the Democrats, that one of their top priorities is just getting rid of the president. Janelle, let me ask you about some trends. 4 years ago, President Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 5 points here in Georgia. Stacey Abrams came within 55,000 votes, 1.5 points, becoming governor. Are you concerned that perhaps the trend is moving in a blue direction here in Georgia? What do you think?
No, I'm not. I'm not concerned, mainly because like I said, the Democratic bench, and I've been saying this for a while, is just not strong enough to beat the president, no matter who you put, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. I will say that when I look at the Bernie Sanders-Biden fight, I do agree with Phil that this is an establishment push, but the establishment is most voters. Even beyond the socialist perspective, I've always said that there is a millennial group of voters that are in high support of Bernie Sanders. And the reason being is because he speaks to something that we've all went through coming out of college. I graduated in 2007 and into a recession, right? So I understand where that comes from, but we are a small pocket. We may be larger than the baby boomers, but we are certainly a small pocket when you look at the grand scheme of things. So I'm not all that surprised that Biden, grew and took over most of the states, because that's what we kind of expected. But I am interested in seeing how he does on the debate stage when it comes to the president. I think that's going to be entertaining, but I just don't think there's anyone that's strong enough right now to beat the president.
Okay. One last question on this subject. Are Bernie voters going to come out enthusiastically and vote for Biden if he's the nominee?
I think they will. And as Kathy said, look, there's been a huge call for unity. And let's not underscore the significance of the endorsement from Congressman Jim Clyburn. And what you saw is everyone is consolidating behind Biden because it's not anti-Bernie. Look, Bernie is going to continue to run an effective campaign. I think that he will win some more states. But at the end of the day, I just think that Biden showed that he has the momentum. He's going to have the money. Mike Bloomberg has said that he's going to support him. So now you bring $1 billion+ into this in about 6 key battleground states. And so I think, look, there's going to be some back and forth, but ultimately I think the Bernie supporters, if Joe Biden is the nominee, will vote for him.
No, you hit on something there, Russ, because I think that Bernie Sanders was denied the nomination by shenanigans by the Democratic National Committee. Many of his supporters remain miffed about 2016, how he was stabbed in the back by the establishment. I think a lot of them won't vote, and some of those Sanders voters, according to some polls, actually could flip to Trump because they're actually, believe it or not, is some agreement with some of Trump's policies, whether it's tariffs or getting out of foreign wars.
What do you think, Kathy?
Well, I just saw on the news yesterday, I think I saw Bernie Sanders, he's gotten a haircut and a new suit. So clearly he knows he's got, an image problem that he's got to overcome in order to kind of keep the strength up. And I don't know that that's going to be enough to get him. But the other thing we have to think about is, along the way, there are going to be vice presidential candidates chosen. And that's going to help shape up what the ticket looks like. And it will balance out what Biden doesn't bring to the table. And, that'll be a complicated but maybe not so complicated formula to figure out, but that will be significant.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on credit for Jim Clyburn. I mean, I don't know whether he likes flowers, scotch, or cigars, but Joe Biden should keep him stocked forever because that was a huge
And what's laughable to me is when my good friend Phil wants to tell me and Kathy about Democratic politics in the process. The bottom line is this: Bernie Sanders is going to do the right thing. He's going to run a competitive race, and no one stole the election from him last time. He got beat fair and square by Hillary Clinton.
You're part of the establishment.
Except when the debate questions were given to his opponent. I mean, that's a little bit.
By the way, he doesn't hesitate to jump into Republican politics at all. So we're called analysts.
Fair enough. We'll call it there for a moment. We learned this week that coronavirus has come to Georgia. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Well, let's talk about the coronavirus. A father who traveled to Italy and his 15-year-old son, his homeschooled son, have contracted the disease in Fulton County. I think it's fair to say that public health experts expect to find more cases when more testing begins in earnest. Phil, what's your assessment of the governmental response here in Georgia so far?
Well, I think Governor Kemp has done a very good job with his team. They're working closely, of course, with the CDC based right here in Atlanta and the federal folks. The governor points out that this is not a pandemic, obviously, nationally or here. We are at low risk as Georgians. He emphasized that. We do obviously have to think about various things, and you hit upon it, Russ. And I think the testing kits, that was one area where the CDC was early criticized. I think they're getting that under control now, but we just are going to have to watch and wait.
Yeah, there's been more testing done in Europe and Asia than there has been here in the U.S. so far. That seems to be a problem, don't you think?
I think it's a problem because I think we really don't know the scope of the disease at this point, and I think Georgia is highly at risk. We have the world's biggest airport. We have people coming through this state at, in numbers that you don't see in most other places. So I think we'll see a lot, and I think the fact that this governor has repeatedly cut the budget of the public health department is going to show why that's not a good idea.
All right. Let's talk about the Senate races. Candidates for elective office qualified this week in Georgia, including Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins, who are in one of the nastier contests here in recent memory, of course, for U.S. Senate. Janelle, is this what Governor Kemp was expecting when he appointed Kelly Loeffler to this seat?
No, I don't think it is at all. And as I always state, that I am in support of Senator Loeffler as part of her leadership team. But I have to add, when I do say that, is that my loyalty or my commentating is not based on loyalty to the campaign as much as it is my confidence in her ability to get the job done. And I believe that's what the governor saw. I feel full confident that she's going to be just fine. She has already moved throughout the state. We have just received the endorsement from Ambassador Nikki Haley, which will be here. She'll be here on Monday to talk about that. So I think everything is great. This is absolutely not what was anticipated. I think I'm more disappointed in how it's taking place because I think there's definitely a cleaner way to do it, but we'll see how it goes.
Theron, does this create an opening for Matt Lieberman or Ed Tarver or Raphael Warnock?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with Janelle. I think the governor was trying to make sure that this was a smooth process, and I definitely, I hear this when I'm at the Capitol, that I want to give Doug Collins a little bit of a cover here. Not that I'm supporting him, but I do think he made a fundamental decision to say, okay, I wasn't the governor's pick. I do want to run. And so you've seen things kind of quiet down publicly between the fight between Loeffler and Collins. I think Phil can probably tell you if there was another job, sort of D that was offered to Collins. As we are sitting here, we're not sure who's going to qualify. But Democrats have got to figure out a way to have a message that will appeal to the Democratic base, but also moderates in the race. I think the Republicans are going to hear a lot from Loeffler and Collins, and so hopefully we'll get one of our Democrats in a runoff with whomever is the person on the Republican side, but it's going to be all about turnout and message.
Yeah. For all the Republicans, Phil, it seems like, and I'm talking about David Perdue, in addition to Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins, it seems like the association with Donald Trump is paramount. What do you think? It
is paramount. As you pointed out, he won by 5 points in 2016 here in Georgia. The state party wisely is targeting those voters that were Trump voters in 2016 but didn't vote in 2018. I think they've targeted over 55 or 60,000 of them. Both sides have to push up the base. That's pretty basic. On Friday, though, my word was that the president, if he's coming to Atlanta, it looks like as we tape that he is visiting the CDC. He's going to bring Kelly Loeffler and her husband down to a fundraiser. And so, like me, I'm a friend to both. I'm a friend to Doug Collins and a friend to Kelly Loeffler. The good news is, mathematically, if they stay in the race, there will be a conservative Republican on the ballot in January 2021. And that's the good news, and they can go after the radical Democrat.
Well, talking about the David Perdue race, I've had an opportunity on our Road to November program, shameless plug, Fridays at 7 o'clock, to talk to John Ossoff, Teresa Tomlinson, and Sarah Riggs Amico, all impressive people in their own right. How do you assess their chances? Because there's not much oxygen for those races with the presidential business going on. We vote in our presidential primary March 24th, and then it's full on until May 19th.
Well, I've endorsed Teresa Tomlinson. She's the candidate for me because she's somebody who has run a city. She understands issues that I care a lot about, particularly transportation, transit, climate change. I'm excited by our candidacy, and so
a city twice as large as South Bend, Indiana, by the way.
Twice as large as So I might have voted for her for president if she had been on that. But I think we will get past some of the drama around the presidential primary, and people here will start focusing, and people will start looking at what the Georgia ticket looks like, and that's what's going to be exciting, and that's what is going to motivate people to come out.
It's a big state, as you know, 159 counties, a lot of territory. That makes it difficult to get your name out there. I mean, Teresa Tomlinson, by all accounts, very, very successful in Columbus. I frankly had never heard her name until 8 months ago.
Yeah, but also I think Sarah Riggs-Amico, having run statewide as the lieutenant governor candidate along Stacey Abrams in 2018, will help. But also John Ossoff is going to have a lot of money, and a lot of people are watching his spend. I think it's been very low. I think Sarah's been able to raise some money, and she's right. Kathy's right. Teresa has been around the state. She's got a lot of energy. So you're going to see in the next 2 weeks that this race is going to be at the top of the list because they're going to start attacking each other, and it's going to be a robust debate.
Now, real quick, the good news, and I think you know this, Janelle, is that David Perdue, who these three are running against, has had favorability ratings when he was elected in 2013, always above 50%. It's going to be tough for any of those three to knock him out, and with Trump pumping up the vote.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I don't want Republicans to think that because Perdue is the stronger candidate, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go out and vote and actively push for voters, because this is definitely going to be an interesting race. As
he was qualifying this week, he said, "I didn't see Donald Trump coming," this David Perdue, "but thank God God sent him." So that's what David Perdue had to say. All right. Coming up, a push to protect the health of new mothers in Georgia, and some lawmakers want to allow home delivery of something you couldn't even buy here on Sundays not that long ago.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Two former lawmakers who want to run for Georgia's Supreme Court have filed suit against election officials for stopping them from qualifying this week for the seat held by Justice Keith Blackwell. The election was set for May. Turns out Blackwell plans to retire in November, and the governor now says, never mind, no need for an election. He'll appoint someone to the court. You have some thoughts on this, Phil.
Well, yes. Let's talk about what the law says. There has to be a vacancy for a governor to appoint someone. And John Barrow, who is, of course, former congressman, and Beth Beskin, a former state representative, want to run for the Supreme Court seat. And so their lawyers have apparently gotten together, and it seems like they might have a good case because there is no vacancy. The justice is still going to be going to work. He's still going to be drawing his paycheck. And I would think that if the governor did want to make an appointment, he ought to tell the justice, you're going to have to resign right now. And so I think it's a very interesting court case. It's in the Fulton County Superior Court, and I would think that there might be an expedited ruling pretty quickly.
I'm not a lawyer, but what you say makes sense. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one? All right.
Yeah.
I
think we all agree.
Everybody agrees with me.
Fair enough. There you go.
This is,
let me just say.
When does that happen?
Let me write that down.
It's a mess. And, I think this is one of the things that troubles me so much about Governor Kemp, and particularly when he didn't resign as Secretary of State and oversaw his own election. This is death of democracy by 1,000 cuts. You can't just keep changing the rules around in order to deny voters their opportunity to vote. And I think that's a real problem.
All right, let's talk about something I know you care about and all of us care about. Georgia lawmakers concerned about the number of new mothers who are dying in the state in the months after they give birth, and are considering a measure to extend the amount of time they qualify for Medicaid so they can get the care they need. Kathy, there was some conversation about extending it for a year. Now they're talking about 6 months. What do you think about this?
Well, I'm glad they're doing it. I've certainly talked about this particular issue of maternal mortality for a long time. It's not enough to address the problem as it occurs. It's an election year, so folks are doing what they need to do, and I'm glad they're doing it, but much, much more needs to happen on this front, because the issue of us being first in maternal death in the country has been around for probably a decade now. Yeah. And people should care about the women of Georgia a lot more than making them wait a decade to get this solved.
What do you think, Jenna?
Yeah, and I think think that my concern, though, is I don't think we should just throw money at it. I think that there needs to be an educational aspect of it. So what we're spending our money on is educating women. I know Kathy and I talked about this earlier, that I do feel like, as I am a young woman who's considering, you know, starting a family, that there's not enough information about postpartum, and not just postpartum depression, but the whole postpartum experience, as well as taking care of the mom. So, you know, there's tons of apps and everything on, you know, the pregnancy process and the baby, but there's not enough on the mom. And I know 6% of the maternal mortality deaths are due to mental illnesses and that postpartum depression. So there needs to be a lot of education around that, as well as there needs to be a lot of education around how to take care of yourself and why it's so important that mom goes to the doctor and not just the baby for vaccines after birth.
Yeah, the 6 months apparently would cost something on the order of $19 million. But they're saying that 60% of these deaths are preventable there.
Absolutely, and I don't think we need any studies. I don't think there needs to be any education. I'm going to say what the Speaker of the House said, David Ralston. He said, how can we be the #1 state to do business and be the #1 state with maternal mortality? I think that legislators need to act now. I don't care how much it costs. The horror stories that I hear from my good friend Charles Johnson, who lost his wife through maternal mortality, maternal death. I mean, the pregnant women, but also the new moms that, to Janelle's point, are just learning how to be new mothers. This is a bipartisan issue. This is a Georgia issue, and you got the Speaker of the House, and other people need to join him, Democrats and Republicans, to say we need funding now for this issue.
That was a good quote by the Speaker. I agree. And just a quick shout out to Representative Sharon Cooper of Marietta, who has really been spearheading this.
All right, let's address something that I think is interesting from a cultural standpoint here in Georgia. It's been less than a decade since lawmakers made it legal to buy alcohol on Sundays, and now they're talking about allowing home delivery of wine and beer. What do you think?
Oh God! So as much as I love Instacart, it has saved my life in so many ways. I do not think that is a good thing to have home delivery when it comes to alcohol, because I do think about, you know, young children getting into it. I also think about how getting up off your couch and having to go get alcohol is a barrier when it comes to people who struggle with alcoholism. And I think that we need to at least keep some level of a barrier. It's already really easy to get alcohol, but as far as home delivery, and then I think all this technology, as much as I love it and I do utilize it, I think it kind of makes us a little bit lazy too.
What do you think, Kathy?
I'm kind of with you on this. It's a problem in search of an answer, I guess. I don't know, but I think we have so many other things to deal with in this state.
Talking about it as a matter of convenience.
That's
it's
right.
the new world that we live in.
I think it's 2020, and Russ, I worked on the sort of Sunday sales as a lobbyist with a team of folks, and we got it passed. It took a long time. I think that if people want to order alcohol to be delivered to their homes, it should be done. I agree with Janelle and Kathy that there is got to be some parental responsibility. But at the end of the day, if you want to have a little sip of wine or a cold beer while you're watching a UGA game on a Saturday or a Falcons game on a Sunday, it is convenient to have that delivered to your home. So I think we got to, support it, but also maybe put some parameters around it. You call for more responsibility, but I think it's a good bill.
Well, you're making sense.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear that. Is it a local option bill? Do you have to vote?
I think so.
I think it's a local option bill, so you could vote yes or no.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Winners and losers when we come back.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Theron, why don't you start for us?
All right, Russ, my first winner is Erica James. She's the first woman and person of color to be named dean at the Wharton School of Business and at the University of Pennsylvania. Erica was a Leadership Atlanta classmate of mine and was leaving Emory to go on to Wharton, so I definitely want to make her a winner. And I was going to make Donald Trump my winner. I know Phil and Janelle are shocked because I had gotten the word that he was not coming to Atlanta, and I didn't want to be stuck in traffic and all that, but I guess he's coming now. So I guess, I'll take back my, was going to be winner with Donald Trump.
All right, Phil.
Well, in the spirit of talking about elections, and we have new electronic voting machines that have been rolled out, and we're talking about security and privacy, and I picked up a paper from Greene County, the Herald Journal, and they're going the extra mile for this. The headline reads, "Voting machines to be under armed guard in Greene County." The 24/7 cameras, armed deputies in Greene County. Now that's the way you do it. Oh. And my loser is David Wilson, he's the Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Atlanta. And of course, for those that are just coming into a 3-year federal investigation of corruption, guess what they're focusing on? The procurement system with the city and how they do it with the airport. David Wilson was telling some subordinates, don't let me know if the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney is talking. Perhaps that could be construed as obstruction of justice. We hear about transparency. That's not transparency. You better be cooperating and not trying to intimidate employees while there's a federal corruption investigation going.
I don't think he was intimidating.
Janelle?
Well, you know what, Theron took away President Trump's winner. I'm going to make him a winner this week in honor of Women History Month. So something that's not getting a lot of attention is that President Trump did approve of the largest paid parental leave program ever. And this helps working moms and working women to be able to, you know, go back to work after, you know, spending a lot more time with their babies. So now they don't have to choose between career and family life. And then also my good friend Sheriff Maddox, Melody Maddox, that's in DeKalb County. She's my winner. And we did a tour at the DeKalb County Jail. And I mean, it's running so efficiently. The staff is so awesome. I think that's wonderful. And lastly, my loser this week has to be everyone who keeps saying that they're voting for Biden because they think he can beat President Trump. I think we need to vote for the things, our issues and our interests and the things that are benefiting us. So I have to make those people my loser.
All right, Kathy, make it quick for us.
Oh, okay. My winner is Basil Ellaby. He's a man who was blamed for burning the highway down. It wasn't his fault, but he took advantage of the opportunities that came his way. He graduated from accountability court. He's doing well, and we look forward to hearing more great things from him. I'm going to make Donald Trump the loser for a whole host of reasons, but any president that comes here on a Friday afternoon and messes up rush hour deserves to be the loser.
Kathy, thanks to all of you. I've enjoyed being with you. Lori will be back next week. My winner was Representative James Clyburn, the most consequential endorsement in the history of endorsements. We'll see you next week.